Hi, my name is Marc Goldberg, Chief Revenue Officer of Method Media Intelligence. We have Shailin Dhar, CEO and co-founder, and Jenny Wilkins, marketing coordinator, and we are here to have a conversation. We're calling this today Office Hours. And why are we calling it Office Hours? Because if we had an office, we would be doing these things, but we don't have an office. We are now all over the world. I don't know if you guys have read the news, but yes, there's this world pandemic and we're just don't have an office right now. So we actually thought it would be interesting to have office hours, not just between the three of us, but with all of you. And so we're recording this session, and we think this is going to be not just an internal tool, but also an external tool. And the internal tool is, we think it's very important for people to understand different aspects of programmatic and the digital ecosystem. We think it's a great thing that our teams start to really understand and bubble up. Everyone has the same starting point and knowledge. And so we're really making a good effort to advocate for more learnings. And we do a lot of reading here at MMI. And what we wanted to do was also just have conversations, because some conversations actually can lead to the other additional questions. And hopefully folks that are listening, whether that you are on the buy side or just even internal here, you follow up. And so my email is marc@methodmi.com, M-A-R-C. That's for every media buyer who wants to do business with us. So please send it to me. Thank you. Everyone in internal, Slack, just ping me. But the idea here is this is a conversation. And if you've seen this video on social, then hopefully you guys will be able to just join the conversation there. But at the end of the day, Jenny is new to our world, and we've been doing a lot of conversations with her, and we just thought she would be a great person to help kind of the conversation flow go, because her curiosity is hopefully some of your curiosity. And what we're trying to do is allow you guys to listen and learn during this time. So we thought a good topic would be OTT CTV, as I think it's coming in the news every 15 minutes. So we thought that was good, as well as we have this big report that's coming out soon. Hopefully you guys will see it as this gets published, or are seeing it soon. I don't know. We'll see where that goes. But I think OTT CTV is a great start. And I just want to open up as a topic.
Yeah, let's dig in. So I guess for those of us who are newly initiated into the world of programmatic and can't speak apparently, what's the difference between CTV and OTT?
It's kind of like the difference between a square and a rectangle. So connected TV covers any sort of television device or kind of streaming full episode programming that is consumed via a full screen device. OTT is kind of a subset of that is over the top boxes. So an actual external device that you connect to a display screen like a TV that actually streams all of the content, like a Roku, a Amazon Fire Stick, a Chromecast from Google, or an Apple TV. And there are others as well. But OTT doesn't include smart TVs from manufacturers like Samsung or Vizio or LG. That stays within the rectangle of CTV, connected television. OTT is a subset of that.
Okay, so then, for instance, like if I were using, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I was going to actually jump in, Jenny. I mean,
Okay.
You've learned a lot of acronyms. Those are, another six letters, but there's even 3 more letters, OLV. Do we know what OLV is?
So CTV and OTT were kind of designed to become distinctions from OLV, online
Jenny,
video.
what's OLV, Jenny?
Online
Yeah.
video.
Very good.
And so the key difference between web video content, which could be a video player on a website or a mobile app, and connected TV is the primary content that's being consumed on that device or screen. Online video is still, we've all seen some sort of article where, whether it's news or a recipe site that has a video player in between the text of the content. And so ads that get served within that player would fall under the category of OLV, online video. But these distinctions, they look very much the same from the ad planning and serving side because it's the same video creative asset. most of the time, but the way they get actually delivered and rendered on a user's device, and therefore how they are able to be measured, which is very important to us at MMI, is a huge distinction. The gap is very, very wide between how those operate.
Okay, so to back up just a little bit for someone who's still kind of a noob at this, if I were talking about Hulu, is Hulu an example of CTT then?
So Hulu can be consumed in a number of ways. Hulu, the streaming app, if I'm watching it on my iPhone or my Samsung Galaxy or my iPad or any other tablet, that is considered CTV. Hulu is also CTV in the category of the Hulu app on a smart TV, where it's the device directly that's connecting to the Hulu service. Then OTT would be a subset of Hulu's inventory that is content consumed via a Roku, Apple TV, Chromecast, or Fire TV stick. And so those are just different devices, but because Hulu is kind of wide ranging in its subscriber audience, as well as the content that it provides, it does cover multiple parts of the CTV rectangle.
Okay, I see. It's starting to make a bit more sense now. So then we're hearing a lot about CTV in the news, and it's a really big deal in ad land right now. So can you kind of unpack a bit more why we're hearing about it so much?
Yeah, I think there's just the last 18 months have shown a huge increase in streaming video consumption. Now we're going to get into a few more acronyms. So SVOD, streaming video on demand, is kind of the wider category. And then there's AVOD within that, which is ad-supported video on demand. So Netflix would be included in streaming video on demand, but that's not ad-supported, right? Netflix is primarily subscriber-based, and there's not ads stitched into the content. There's some product placement and all of that, but it doesn't affect the actual user experience. AVOD is ad-supported video on demand that can include, depending on who you talk to, this is where we get a little into the gray area. Some people consider, YouTube as ad-supported video on demand, which you could kind of say it is on-demand video content that is ad-supported. Most of the time, it's referring to another acronym, FEP, which is full episode programming. So whether it's Storage Wars or a sitcom or documentary that you watch or a home improvement show from Home and Garden TV, you would start a full episode of a program and they have pre-designated ad slots within that, very similar to the cable TV experience that we're all used to for decades. The key difference and why it's become such a big topic of conversation is most projections are showing that the kind of traditional cable TV content is being consumed as much online as it is through cable providers. And the big difference between cable TV and web-served television content is anything that's web-served is measurable. And so it's not reliant on sampled panel-based viewing metrics. It's actually able to be measured in its entirety, not just for quality metrics, but also just for general viewership, which can dictate the ad dollars that flow through.
Yeah, so let me jump in and add two cents there. So if you think about video consumption, obviously the world has continued to show an increase of that consumption because more and more of us are adding new subscribing features like a Hulu, Peacock, Disney Plus, Apple Plus. All of a sudden you're getting more of these, and so they're becoming more prevalent to all of us. So there is an attraction from ad land to get in front of some of these opportunities. But the other attraction is that creative asset is the commercial that they've been building their whole career off of, and for the last X amount of years, and showing the TV commercial now on the digital device. And I think it's that's really pushed the money into this space, because this creative asset, that sight, sound, and motion, has shown to be very effective over the years. So let's continue to double down on what we know has worked. Now, knowing that they want to push it there, well, you need somewhere to go. And I think that's where all these homes are now being created in terms of Peacock and all these different places, because they know that the demand is there. Now they have to have the supply. And as we know, demand and supply, they sometimes don't always work out the right way for everybody. But now we're seeing something in this report that I think we want to eventually get to, and that supply is now questionable. What's going on there? Why is there so much?
It has to do with the delivery chain. The nice thing about web served video, or OLV, is that was served to a browser. And that browser was used to visit the dozens or hundreds of websites that any person actually browses throughout the course of a day, a week, or a month. Now you have a device and a kind of operating system, whether that's the smart TV operating system or the OTT device. And then there's siloed apps within that, which have become even more siloed since the Apple changes, especially for Apple TV users, where these apps aren't even sharing information with each other. And so Apple TV or Roku or your Samsung Smart TV or LG Smart TV have become kind of your browser for all of this content, because they're the gateway to visit this or load this or watch this. And because there's that shift, and you also want to balance user experience, right? As you don't want people to have gaps between the content and the ad break. With cable TV, we're all used to, the scene ends a certain way to go into a commercial break, and then you come back and it goes straight into the next scene. For streaming video that's ad supported, you also don't want these gaps where things are just kind of rendering or loading, and we're all used to that little loading circle bar type thing. To avoid that, publishers have started adopting a technology called SSAI, server-side ad insertion. So essentially, when you start that home, mountain home, lakeside renovations episode, which is 22 minutes of content, that's what we watch in my house on the weekends.
I don't know
All 86 episodes. When you start that episode, all the ad breaks are pre-designated. So it's 22 minutes of content that gets stretched out to a 30-minute slot, and you fill in 8 minutes of videos. And this is not the same for every publisher, but let's assume we're stretching 22 minutes of content to 30 minutes viewing time. Those 8 minutes of ad breaks could be 16 30-second slots. They could be 8 one-minute ads, depending on what type of creatives you're allowing. But all of those ad requests get front-loaded. And so as soon as you start the episode, you don't see an ad in the first few minutes. And so the publisher and the ad server have time to send out all the ad requests, get the responses, and then stitch them into the content so that there's no break. You're not sending a new ad request every time you get to that designated ad break. That means that ads, especially from the advertiser and measurement perspective, are not being delivered at the time that the viewer is actually consuming them. And so they get delivered to this kind of holding area, which is that ad stitching server. And that's a huge change from anything we're used to traditionally in the past, where the ad rendering was counted when it was actually loaded on the viewer's device. And now the delivery happens 4 minutes or 40 minutes before it would actually load on a user's screen. So from the measurement and transaction perspective, we're now just kind of accepting that we deliver it to this holding area and don't get a view on when it actually gets played.
Yeah. So now we kind of go back in time when I was a young man. In the agency side, we would we would just understand that these rating points and these shows were being watched, and this is how many people were watching. And now you introduce the internet, and for banners, when it loaded, that's when you had it, that's when you started to pay for it. And so kind of this shift of, hey, we bought it, it's supposed to run during this period, hopefully it runs and sees enough people. There's a couple of things that I want to just dig in there. So with when it runs, I could go away and go make my popcorn. I still paid for it, right? And so the TV folks are accepting the traditional measurement, like Nielsen, is just saying, here's the population, hopefully it ran. In this SSAI, they're doing a really good service for the user and just pushing all the stuff, letting them get it, and then serving it to them. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're trying to measure your digital campaigns, you should be able to measure your digital campaigns. And what I think we're saying, and Shailin, you can jump in, but I think what we're saying together is you're not measuring properly at this point with SSAI, because you can't do everything you need to do. And I think the thing that most people don't understand in our industry, and we're fortunate at MMI to see some of the data, is how much invalid traffic is out there and how much invalid traffic in the underbelly of the internet exists. And I think that's what the report will continue to show. We've done some other reports that show, and and I don't want to blame NBC, ABC, CBS for just being who they are, and they've known a certain world to transact in a certain way. But a lot of folks on Madison Avenue don't understand how the underbelly has been able to jump into their ecosystem and take the dollars. And that's where I think it's this measurement that we talk about could help solve, if they were to understand how the missing pieces start to come together.
Yeah, and it has to do with that final destination of the ad creative that has opened up the door for a lot of fake traffic. If the requester of the ad is just a server, not a actual user consumer device, and then the destination for the eventual ad creative is that same server, there's less kind of fabrication necessary for a bad actor to come in and generate fake ad requests, because we've gone from serving an ad as the content moves along to front loading all of that ad delivery. And so you don't get these complete signals of, okay, this is actually when it ran. And timing with all these server signals is very important, because you have to leave a certain window to expect a response from another server. And with SSAI, like I mentioned, it could be 3 minutes later, it could be 40 minutes later, depending on the content. Maybe, Marc, you started an episode, 8 ads actually got delivered to the ad stitching server, and then you paused and then walked away and came back 2 hours later and finished the program. That's not a signal that's being sent back to the advertiser's ad server that, hey, it was actually 2 hours later when this rendered. And so for the bad actors, if they just need to pretend to be an ad server, they don't have to spoof an actual consumer device, because all of these apps, these streaming video apps, they serve a multitude of devices. So there's not this very clear authentication that can be done of, oh, well, was it an Apple TV or not? Because you want to serve ads to everybody.
So Shailin, can I ask a question, as I'm trying to make sure we all understand it? So when you say a video goes from the server to server in the SSAI, can you explain also, if I was going to ESPN's homepage and that banner, what's that kind of equal?
The difference between those two?
Yeah. Just I want to get some. So I'm just trying to show the differences between what you just described in the video, what a display may look like.
So a banner, I mean, at least at this point, in terms of measurement, is very straightforward. It's only when the page is being loaded that the publisher's ad stack will actually send out the ad request, whether they're to a direct advertiser through their ad server, or whether it goes into the programmatic exchanges where they open it up for bidding. All of that happens quickly enough in a matter of, sub 300 milliseconds for the auction to take place, the ad request to be sent out, the ad to be delivered back and actually rendered on the page. And that's why we see ads kind of following us around. You can look at a pair of shoes, 2 minutes later, go open a news website, and then that top banner, or let's say ESPN, that top banner could be for that exact shoe because those dots have already been connected. So when they actually put that impression opportunity into the exchanges, that shoe manufacturer goes, oh yes, we do want that user, serve this ad. And all of that happens in a very clear chain. Ad request gets sent out, somebody takes the opportunity, delivers a creative gets served, user moves on. The timing between the ad being delivered, and I think now we're getting to a little bit deeper in the weeds than we usually go externally. Even the difference in banners between counting on the download of the creative asset to the page versus the actual beginning of the rendering process is a distinction. And there's a lot of advertisers that still haven't worked that out just for web banners, unfortunately. They're still paying on these incomplete events of just, winning an auction or even a creative downloading, but that is not really an impression. There's 10 to 15% discrepancies between those stages at both levels. So the actual ad event that we count is a rendered ad, but there are multiple stages in the delivery process, and there's similar multiple stages in CTV and OTT, but different technologies at play.
I was trying to do a little different and show how it kind of makes it a little bit more difficult. The OTT CTV space with the SSAI and the two sides, and how we are able to see a lot more and check a lot more. And that may just be, JavaScript or however, but like at the end of the day, what we're saying here is the measurement and the ability to really connect those two dots on these two sides is much more difficult in OTT CTV than people understand. And we keep pouring money into this space, not knowing that some of this money is not real. Or sorry, not many users are real. Again, back to the underbelly. I mean, we know again that 48% of the internet is non-human, and that scares us. But there is some, ways to filter out this traffic, whether you're using a CDN, whether you're using a brand safety vendor, whatever method you're using, there is a way to get it down. And then there's some malicious, inventory that is getting through that, you would jump with a vendor like MMI, but in OTT CTV, it's not as clear.
Yeah. The proportion of non-human traffic on the web generally, unfortunately, doesn't safely carry over to the ad exchange population of web requests, because those can be manufactured in silos without needing a bot or browser or even a TV emulator to actually be viewing content. Web requests can be generated in silos, and it's very much like right now, unfortunately, it's very much like throwing counterfeit currency in at the last stage before it gets put in a vault. You're kind of bypassing the note checkers, and that is what makes it difficult, because the speed of these transactions limits the amount of time that any party has for verification. Because if you slow down the actual delivery and the transaction process, that affects user experience. And that is always a priority for the actual content owners. Is sure, we like more ad dollars, but long term, we're going to lose this audience if we don't give them a good experience when they're on our property. So it's not anything new in terms of our market, the balance between advertisers' needs and user experience that publishers have to manage. But this gap is, I think, too wide and needs to be narrowed before a lot more money gets spent in this channel.
Yeah, I mean, Oh, go ahead, Jenny.
I mean, listening in, it does feel like there's been a lot of ambiguity that's just kind of been accepted by a lot of people within the ecosystem, right? Because it seems like there's just this overarching like fear of missing out on being able to like serve your content. So, I mean, I guess we're starting to creep into the territory of this discussion now of really unpacking counterfeit CTV traffic, right? And is this maybe this is a good opportunity to really unpack like why it happens, what makes it so susceptible, what makes CTV so susceptible to counterfeit, why we're seeing it, what specifically do you think is making it so susceptible?
Yeah, that is, I mean, I hope I can answer that. If anybody has the perfect answer to that, they'll be far better off than us. But the thing with CTV is there's a kind of misconception that it's a limited number of channels or apps that you are exposed to. And unfortunately, what's happened is TV apps or streaming channels within an app or marketplace have become as easy to create and as numerous as the websites that are on the web. And so the barrier to entry always, was when you're buying TV, let's say cable, it wasn't like I couldn't just decide on Saturday that I want to create a TV channel and now get ad dollars for my channel. With web served content, I can go on Fiverr and get a Roku app or a streaming app generated in a day for under $500. And now I can immediately plug into the actual exchanges where everything is done in an automated way. And you're trying to now verify individual transactions rather than the entity itself. And that's what I think is causing a lot of these issues is we don't have high barriers to entry to actually come in with a new web property or content channel. And so in an exchange marketplace where everything is flying on automation and you just have to check certain boxes, right? Is the seller says, okay, I'm good with this floor price, as a CPM, and I'm willing to take any advertisers except for guns, gambling, and let's say adult content. The buyer is looking at, okay, this is non-Linux operating system. This is within this range of IP addresses that I've approved, and it's not adult content. And so you have these like limited checkboxes that both sides need to fit. And unfortunately, I mean, we're getting into very deep philosophical things now about measurement, but incrimination versus exoneration, like people, I think too often on the media buying side, conflate an inclusion list versus an exclusion list. And inclusion is, I only want this type of content: sitcoms, home improvement, news. And so anything that's not one of those three, I'm not going to accept. Exclusion lists are kind of the reciprocal of that, where I don't want news, I don't want documentary, I don't want adult content. And so literally anything but those defined categories ends up being able to come through, including, in far too many cases, undefined categories. And so a lot of those kind of exclusion list practices allow bad actors to say, I'm not going to declare any content category because that's how I bypass any of these barriers.
Yeah, as the brand safety guy, I can tell Marc's like really eager to chime in here. So what's your perspective on it?
I'm not the brand safety guy, just the guy. So I actually think my aha moment was I asked someone to borrow the Roku. And I ended up going on the Roku and seeing that there are a lot of things on Roku that I had no idea what they were. You know, you get your main stations that we all kind of could mention, and then you start seeing all these other random long tail, essentially apps. And I went into a darts game, I want to say, and I was like, who plays darts? And it was like, what is going on here? Like, why are these apps even in existence? Who's doing this? And then you look at the volume of impressions, and we have clients, we get to see some data where there's no way that this dart game did, let's just say, 100,000 impressions in a day. Just no way. Well, there is a way. And how is that way? You fake it. And so a lot of this stuff, and Shailin mentions, Fiverr is just a way you can go get someone to do something for $5, right? And I guess that's what it is. But you can have them create your darts game, and I'm not picking on this darts game, just giving an example, darts game. And that darts game just shows a media buyer as well as Roku that there's a legit thing here. And that thing is listed all the right checkboxes so that they can now get more money from all the other vendors. And what happens is it looks pretty here. No one really goes here, but it gets exchanged in the marketplace because people are throwing, these guys are putting fake bid requests in there to show that it's coming from darts. Oh, you look at darts, it's a real game. Cool. It hits all the signals. Cool. And that's kind of what's going on, is they're giving it a home. And that aha moment was, there's a long tail of home here, and all that home is crap.
Yeah, that's how, I mean, that's how bad actors did with just banner ads on websites, was you never wanted to show up on anybody's reporting. You wanted to be in the long tail of every advertiser's reporting. And that's how you just went unnoticed, because you could generate ad revenue from 500 different advertisers, but you're still generating millions of impressions a day, but you're never in the top 50 of anybody's domain reports. And so your site looks ridiculous. It's, you know, USA home improvement expert man.net. And it's like, most advertisers go, that looks really weird. But
is that your homepage?
I just outed myself.
But go back to this is how it used to be done in display, and now it's so much easier to do because the measurement is not there.
Yeah, and so there's this traditional kind of filtering that's always been relied on of IP addresses. And part of the issue that we talked about earlier with CTV and OTT with server-side ad insertion is the ad request will show the IP address of the user and whatever internet local network they're on. But what the ad server sees, where they're delivering the ad, is the IP address of the destination, which is that ad server, which could be in a data center. And so there's already huge issues across agencies. They're targeting 100 different cities across the United States. And then they look at their ad server reporting for the geographic breakdown, and it's 3 cities. Because those 3 cities are where all the data centers are. And so that's a big difference from the web, actually, is because you were still serving the ad to the device that the user has in front of them, you still saw their IP address. And so that geo assurance of the geo-targeting would still match most of the time. Now you have a mismatch here of IP addresses, which also makes it very difficult because there's a lot of invalid traffic verification that is fully reliant on things like IP address. And so if the IP address is no longer indicative of the user's network, then you have a lot of issues in terms of IVT, invalid traffic filtration, geo measurement, and just even kind of ensuring delivery.
So this is office hours, and I want to make sure we all understand that this is an open forum for office hours, and I want to make sure we get your opinion, everyone who's listening, where we want to go with this. And so we have a couple topics that we've listed. billable events, pre-bid versus post-bid, arbitrage, brand safety, tag wrapping, transparency, privacy, and the list goes on. We definitely want your input in any format where you want us to go. But before we go, I wanted to tease out, we are releasing a report around OTT CTV. It's called Rapid Fire. And I just want to let everybody know that we're excited to release this. I'm not sure when this video is going to get posted, but we are excited that this is going to be released. And I wanted Shailin just to kind of high level quickly mention it. And then next week or whenever, we will see you.
Yeah, I'm very excited for that to come out. For the past 12 months, at least, we've seen a lot of research reports come out that have talked about, CTV, OTT fraud, and, the words bots and malware and app spoofing have been used. And based on our kind of firsthand experience with analyzing a lot of this traffic and actually digging into the sources behind it, we found that the primary technique that's used doesn't rely on a bot, doesn't have any connection to malware, and doesn't actually require much spoofing. It actually just requires kind of staying in the shadows and hiding in the back. So what we tried to do, and this is always kind of the trick with any sort of fraud research, is you want to outline how it's done so that the companies affected by the fraud can do something about it and actually take action. But you don't want to write a manual on how to go commit this type of fraud. And so what we tried to do in this report is talk about the overall CTV and OTT market and what's contributing to a lot of these budgets flowing in, what causes the issues in measurement, and then actually delve into the technique behind this traffic generation, which we just mentioned earlier about. This is kind of creating new web events in a silo. They're not actual TVs in a big room that are consuming content and advertising. It's just fake ad events that are being generated. And because all you need to do is check the boxes of the system that's looking to buy this ad space, that's pretty much all they need to do. And they found an efficient way to do that. And that technique is what we dubbed as rapid fire.
Well, thank you. So Shailin at methodmi.com, Jenny at methodmi.com, Marc at methodmi.com, info at methodmi.com. Our Twitter handles probably will be listed on this video as well. Be my friend on LinkedIn, our friend on LinkedIn, and continue to follow us and learn more. But thank you guys for attending office hours.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for having me.